Hello, friends. The 823rd day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. This weekend, the Russians were actively advancing in the Avdiivka direction, as well as in the Kupiansk area. Yesterday, the Deep State Telegram channel reported the loss of Umansky. Russian public pages previously wrote about this. The enemy's advance is recorded in this area, up to 3.36 kilometers wide and to a depth of 1.94 kilometers. This village is an important defense point for the Ukrainian armed forces in the direction of Selydove and Pokrovsk, Donetsk region. The day before, the village of Selydove was probably captured in the same area. The Russians published a video of their flag being planted in the village and claimed that the village has been captured. And to the northeast of Ocherechny, Arhangel's Key was captured. The American Institute for the Study of War also writes in today's report about the advance of the Russians in Krasnohorivka, west of Donetsk. The General Staff confirmed that Russian troops are trying to advance in the city, but the defense forces are taking urgent measures to stabilize the situation and contain the superior enemy. Judging by the map, Russia controls less than half of Krasnohorivka. In the Kupiansk sector, the Russians advanced to Ivanivka. The General Staff did not comment on the situation there in its latest report, but the day before yesterday the department announced the partial success of the enemy in the area of this village. Ukrainian experts report that the enemy occupied the southern and central parts of Ivanivka, and the northern part is being clarified, and advanced along the railway north of Kyslivka in an area up to 2 kilometers wide and to a depth of 1.37 kilometers. The Russians yesterday published a video from the settlement and announced its capture. The Russian Ministry of Defense today also announced the capture of Berestove. Deep state experts deny this information and write that clashes in the village continue. According to them, the enemy had partial success, but failed to completely occupy the village. In general, there has been a serious increase in activity among Russians on the Selydove-Kupiansk front in recent days. Russian military telegram channels attribute the acceleration of the advance to the fact that the Ukrainian armed forces were forced to withdraw some of their reserves from this direction and transfer them to Kharkiv to stop the advance of Russian troops from the border. In the Kharkiv direction, the fighting seems to be taking on a more positional character. Little is known about changes in the front line. The Institute for the Study of War believes that at this stage, the Russians are on the defensive and are trying to increase the size of their northern group of forces, which may be followed by increased offensive operations in the area. According to American experts, for the second phase of the operation in the north of the Kharkiv region, the Russians will need from 50,000 to 70,000 people. According to initial estimates, the offensive began with half the strength. The Institute considers the capture of Kupiansk to be a precondition for the start of the second phase of the offensive. Zelensky said today that Russia is preparing another group of troops for an offensive near the Ukrainian border, in 90 kilometers from Kharkiv to the northwest. Apparently, we are talking about the concentration of troops on the border with the Sumy region, which the Ukrainian military previously spoke about. At the same time, Russian military telegram channels write that the Russians expect a counter-offensive of the Ukrainian armed forces from Lipsy and in Vovchansk in order to push the Russian army beyond the borders. They write that the Russians are already preparing for defensive battles. And meanwhile, Russia produces artillery shells about 3 times faster than Ukraine's Western allies and at 75% less cost. Sky News writes about this, citing a published analysis by the consulting company Bain & Company. The cost of producing 152mm artillery shells in Russia fluctuates around $1,000 and per unit. At the same time, the average cost of shells produced in Europe and the USA is about $4,000, although in some cases their cost can be more than $5,000 per unit. The publication notes that these figures highlight the serious problem facing the Ukrainian armed forces as they rely on ammunition supplies from the United States and Europe. The US, UK, and other European allies are trying to ramp up production at their factories, but their ability to produce artillery shells still lags behind Russia, despite a combined economic power that dwarfs Russia's. Sky News cites a comment from one of the artillerymen of the Ukrainian armed forces, who said that for every shell fired by Ukraine, the Russians fire 5. According to Bain & Company research, Russian artillery shell production for 2024 will be approximately 4.5 million this year, compared with a combined production of about 1.3 million shells in European countries and the United States. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.